How you going, YouTube? I'm Papa Oxy and welcome back to another Extreme Reactors tutorial, specifically about turbines. I would like to say that this is an all-comprehensive guide on the matter. I'm going to be honest with you all, this mod can be pretty complex and weird, with lots of little tidbits of information, and I don't want this tutorial to be an hour long, but rather than me trying to show you literally everything there is to know about the mod, I'm going to give you guys the basic information you need to start using turbines. Like always, this video is made in sections and will have timestamps in the timeline to help you find the information that you need. This video took a ton of effort to make, so if you could show some love with all the usual YouTube shenanigans down below, I would be deeply appreciative. Now before we build a turbine, I'm going to go over some necessary things to get a turbine to operate and also talk about some general information that will be important to know before building them. So, much like reactors, there are only two types of turbines, basic versions and reinforced versions. You don't need a degree to know that reinforced versions will perform way better than basics, but the only drawback being that they are more expensive to create. Reinforced turbines require a ton of steel, which is kind of a pain to make. Now, if you are interested, I go over how to make steel easily in my last tutorial, which you can find the link to in the description. But I will say, if you want something quick and easy, basic turbines are capable of producing tens of thousands of FE per tick and only require iron. Both versions will require cyanite though, and the only way to get cyanite is by having an extreme reactor produce it as a byproduct. And I will say you will need a lot of cyanite. Now, if it were me personally, I would just build the reinforced turbines first because you can basically make them an unlimited size and add on to them whenever you want. Whereas the basic turbines, you can only build them up to a 5x5x10, and that's it. Now, let's go over our first major thing that we need for turbines, and that is steam. Now, to get a turbine to operate correctly, we need to supply it with steam, which is basically the power source for turbines. And unfortunately for you, we will have to build another reactor specifically for producing steam. I say unfortunately because this reactor will not be capable of producing power, but instead we'll use the same process to produce steam. It will in fact produce cyanite though, which is a nice bonus. Now, building this reactor is exactly the same as you would normally, with the same fuel source, same fuel rods, and same coolants. Okay, so once we have our reinforced reactor made just like a normal one, with our access ports on either side for the uranium and cyanite, we are then going to take this reactor active forged fluid port, make sure it's the active one, you don't want the passive one. We are then going to place them down on either side of the reactor just like this. It doesn't really matter which side you place them on as long as you know which one is which. We are then going to make sure that one of them receives some water, so we'll place a pipe down here and we have a sink. We'll just make sure this is set to pull and now this is receiving water. Then we can come over to the other side and we will right click on this and change it to the output setting. Now you can see in the top there, it shows that there's steam inside of this port, which is what we want. That's great. So if we come inside of this reactor now, we can see that where the energy buffer was once at is now have been replaced with a vapor fluid tank, which is holding the steam. And then to the left of that is where we can see the water that's inside of the reactor. Now, if we turn this on, it's not really going to do much because we already have steam in here, but this will actually start producing more steam using the water to burn it up into the vapor fluid. And down below this, you can see basically the efficiency of the machine. The bigger that you make these, the better the efficiency will be. Also, the better coolants you use, the better the efficiency will be. That's basically all you need to know about producing steam, so let's talk about induction coils, which play a vital role in the efficiency of a turbine. Now, one of the biggest parts to a turbine are the induction coils. Induction coils consist of 8 blocks that form a ring around a rotor shaft. You can only have up to 3 of these coils, with 3 rings obviously being the best, you would think. But I've found that especially in smaller turbines, when only using 1 ring of a very high-end induction coil, it can typically produce more power than it could with 3 rings. The reason this is happening is dependent on how large your turbine is. So, looking at this 5x5x10 reinforced turbine, you can see on the bottom right of the GUI something called rotor efficiency. Now, the higher this number is, the more power will be produced. Now, let's say that you have 3 coils of Insanite inside this turbine. Looking at the efficiency, it shows that it is very low, with roughly 2.6 million FE per tick being produced. But if we come over to this other turbine that is the same size, but with only 1 coil, it shows the efficiency being very high and the power basically being doubled. Weird, right? Well, this is because Insanite is one of the better blocks you can use as a coil, and because of this, it takes a lot more work for the rotor blades to spin due to the amount of induction the Insanite produces. So, the more high-end coils you add to a small turbine like this, the less power will be produced because the turbine is spinning slower. So what's the point of having 3 coils? Well, that's where larger turbines come in. Because there is more space for turbine blades, we are able to spin the rotor faster at the cost of more steam, which increases the efficiency of the turbine, and this will allow us to put more coils inside, thus increasing induction, which in turn increases the amount of power being generated. Now, this requires testing on your end to see how many coils are required for the types of coils you are using and the overall size of your turbine. All you need to do is try to get your turbine efficiency up to 100%, or as high as you can get it at the very least. Yo, check this snake out. Crazy. Alright, let's go over some of the best materials that can be used as induction coils. There are a ton of blocks that can be used as coils, which can make it hard to choose the best or even right one for you. So to save you time, we will just go over some of the most accessible and best performing ones overall. But really quickly, if you are unsure if a block can be used as a coil or not, you can enable advanced tooltips by pressing F3 and H at the same time and hover over a block in your inventory, and it will tell you if it is compatible or not. Now, here in front of me are what I think would be the most relevant blocks to use as coils rated from best to worst. You can pause the video here and take a look to see which one you want to go with. It's important to note that you can mix different types of blocks in your coils, which is nice if you don't have enough of one block to complete a coil. Now, even though the end of the scale says worst, that does not mean that they are poor material for coils. They are simply just not the best. That being said, they are much better than most other materials you can use. Alright, with all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and go over how to build a reinforced 5x5x10 turbine and how to properly configure it. First thing we want to do is make sure that we have a reactor that is capable of producing steam, or if you already have something producing steam, then even better. I will just be showing you what to do with a reactor, which is what I have set up over here. Secondly, we're going to look inside of this chest and show you all the material you will need to build the turbine. Starting off, we will need 82 turbine housings, 91 reinforced glass, 8 turbine rotor shafts, 20 rotor blades, 1 turbine controller, 1 turbine rotor bearing, 1 active forge fluid port, and 1 energy power tap. First thing we're going to do is just grab the housing here, and then we will grab the rotor bearing shaft, and then we can come right next to this reactor, probably like 2 blocks away is fine, and we're just going to build our 5x5 base here. And we are going to make sure to leave a block right in the dead middle for the bearing. Okay, so once the bearing's in, we can go ahead and build the frame. So on each of the corners, we're just going to build up 10 blocks. And then we can just fill in the top like that. Then we'll go around and just do the same on all of the corners of the turbine. Okay, once that is done, we can go ahead and grab the rest of our stuff here. Grab the glass and the turbine blades and all of that. We'll go ahead and we'll go put in all of our ports first. We'll put the controller down in the front. We'll put the fluid port in front of the reactor here so we can access the steam easily. And I like to put my power tap in the back. Next thing I like to do is fill in all of the glass on the sides. So we will go ahead and do that. Okay, so once the glass is all filled in, we can go ahead and grab our rotor shaft, and going up the middle of the turbine, we'll go up 8 blocks, making sure to leave a space at the top here. And then we can take our blades and just make a square around them like this, connecting them to the shaft. And we just need to make sure that we leave 3 spaces of the shaft exposed for the coils. So then we can take our moderator and go ahead and just place them in like this, filling in all of the gaps. Okay, so once we're at the top, we'll just take the rest of our turbine housing and fill in the top. You can also use glass for this process. Same with the glass on the sides. You can just use regular housing, but it looks nicer to use glass. Now, once the turbine is actually complete, it will turn into a multi-block just like the reactor does, and then you will be able to see that it's 100% when this light is blinking and you can actually access the inside. Just like the reactors, if there's a block in there that doesn't belong, it will tell you inside where that might be at. So it's showing us the coordinates, and obviously it's the block I just placed. So let's remove that. And there we go. The reactor's good to go. Now, the next step would to be put the steam inside of this reactor because we have nothing in here. Therefore, the turbine cannot spin. So we're going to go ahead and grab a mechanical pipe over here and just throw it in the side of the reactor like so. As you can see, there's steam in the mechanical pipe. And if we look inside of this turbine, you can see now we have steam. Now, in my opinion, the goal of the turbine is to get the RPM of the turbine to steadily stay in a position where you're comfortable with it running and where it can gain the most power. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the turbine. And as you can see, the rotor speed is starting to increase, and we have the steam being injected into the chamber, which is spinning these coils back here. What we're looking to get here is for this RPM to get up to like 1800 RPM, and then we can start messing with these millibuckets here, which is the flow rate governor. This determines how much steam is being injected into the chamber, and this determines how fast or slow this RPM is going to be. Now you can see that it's not producing any power yet, which is fine. The way we produce power is by engaging these coils here. So if I click this, it'll engage the coils and it will start producing power. The reason I'm not doing that yet is because it'll make this go up a lot slower, and we want this to be at like 1800 RPM. But we're getting close there, and it's going to increase anyways regardless. As you can see, it just slowed down tremendously, but it's still going up pretty quick. But now we are producing power here. Like I said though, we want this to be around 1800, 1700 RPMs, which is where we're at. So now we need to start messing around with this flow rate governor. What I like to do is I like to start lowering it so that this will slow down and not go up so fast, so we can really work with it better. And to go down by tens, you just hold control. You can also just click it manually without pressing any buttons, and it will just go down by 1. Or if you hold shift, it will take it up to 2000 or 0 respectively. So you can see that we're down to like 1000 millibuckets for the governor, and the RPM is starting to slow down now. This is the range we want it to be in, and I actually want it to stop going down, so we're going to go ahead and raise up the millibuckets. And we want to get to a point where one click will determine whether it goes up or down. So we're still not there yet. We need to go up a little bit more. Okay, so now you can see that it's starting to rise. That's good. So we're getting really close to where it should be at. Okay, there. So the number just dropped. This is where we want it to be, 1012 millibuckets. This will get it to a point where the turbine will be constantly at a rate that doesn't change. Eventually this will settle into a position where it doesn't, oh, it's doing it right now. It's fluctuating between, or is it not? Okay, no, it's not. Anyways, we want it to be in a position where this rotor shaft won't go any faster or any slower. It will just be at a constant rate, and eventually this will come down to a point where it's not going to do that. It's not going to change the speed at all. I would like to say that depending on the types of coils you're going to use, the amount of flow rate you're going to need for your reactor is going to be different than mine. Every coil has a little bit different induction rating. So depending on how much you have in there, how big your reactor is, and how much better quality your coils are, the flow rate will be different for you. And that's just going to take testing on your end. It's really not that bad though. Once you get up to the 1800 RPMs, and then you can just mess around with the flow rate, you'll be able to find pretty quickly like where your flow rate should be at. I would like to say too that even though it recommends 900 to 18 RPMs, the higher you go, the little bit better it's going to be. Typically, if you go above 1800 RPMs, you're not going to see that much difference in power output, but sometimes there are blocks that will perform better above 1800 RPM. And like I said, even though it says over 2000 RPM may cause it to fail, I've never found that to be true. Now, these buttons here don't really matter. I typically just leave them on vent coolant or vent only excess coolant. These two do not change the function of the reactor at all. This one here will slow down the reactor if you click it. So I'll just go ahead and show you. It's starting to slow down the speed of the reactor. We don't want that, so we're just gonna go ahead and turn it back on. This is good for if you are messing up the flow rate and the reactor is just spinning way too fast. You can turn this on and it will slow down the flow rate. And The reason I say that is because in this little GUI here, it says speeds over 2000 RPM may cause a turbine to fail catastrophically. I don't know if that's true or not. I've had these things go up to like 5000 RPM and nothing bad has ever happened. The only thing that is happening is the power output is not that great if you go up that fast. I don't know why that is, but that is. But I wouldn't worry about these things blowing up. I've tried to blow these things up and they just do not blow up. The next thing we're gonna look at is the rotor efficiency. As you can see, it's up to like 74%, which is not the best, but it is the best for the amount of power you're gonna get. Let me explain how this works. Even though the efficiency is not high, that's only in terms of how much fuel is being used, how much steam is being used in this turbine. That doesn't determine how much power is being produced. So if we get this down to 100%, and I'll just show you right now, we'll get down to like 100%, which should be around like 600 millibuckets probably. Like 550 maybe, no, keep going down, 100%, there. You can see that my power output is starting to lessen now. We're starting to get less power, but the amount of steam that's being used to spin this turbine is lower. So if you're worried about how much steam is going into the turbine, this is what you should be looking at. If you're not worried about how much steam you're going to be using, which I don't think there's ever a position in the world where that is a case, you can just go ahead and do what I showed you and get it to a point where the power is gonna, or the RPM is gonna fluctuate very lightly. It's not gonna move at all, and it's gonna be at that 1800 RPM, which is where you're gonna see the most power output. Why? All right, guys, I think that's everything that I need to show you for the turbines. There's some other things I could show you, like the redstone port, but that could be a whole nother 10 minutes of the video, and we just do not have that time. I mean, it's basically just like the one on the reactor. It just does a lot of extra functions for the turbine, and you guys can mess around with that. I believe in you. I will be making another video on this mod in the near future about the reprocessor and the fluidizer, and that allows you to make the really high-end material like the Insanite, the Inite, and Ridiculite, all of that stuff. So expect to see that one in the near future. I hope so. I really appreciate you guys watching the video. If it helped out, please let me know down in the comments, and I hope to see you guys in the future. Bye.